Hello everyone, welcome to HFY Beyond Terror. This channel is all about HFY and sci-fi stories, where humanity's underestimated and then proves...
Field evaluation, Naru 9. I am not pessimistic. Pessimists assume the worst for emotional reasons. I assume the worst because it is statistically responsible. That is an important distinction, and one I tried very hard to explain to Commander Jax when he announced, in his calm instructor voice, that our final Academy evaluation would take place on Naru 9. Jax did not ask for my explanation. Jax never asked for explanations. He asked for performance. Naru 9 is listed in the Union Catalog as a Class 3 hostile biome, the sort of designation that looks harmless until you learn what it's competing against. Class 1 worlds are walk around, breathe, don't eat the glowing berries. Class 2 worlds are walk around, breathe, don't eat the glowing berries, also the wind might slap you. Class 3 worlds are where the catalog stops using gentle wording and starts using phrases like high predator density, chemical irritants common, and storm events may relocate heavy objects. 90-something% of known sapient species do not volunteer to set foot on Class 3 worlds. The remaining percentage are humans, certain competitive herbivores with unresolved issues, and a handful of researchers who have never met a sensible personal boundary. I am Rilk Vask, 3rd Cycle Cadet of the Galactic Union Defense Academy. Logistics track, team coordination elective, because some of us contribute to survival by ensuring everyone eats before they hallucinate. My instructor calls me methodical. My friends call me the one who knows how we're going to die. When Jax finished his announcement, he displayed team rosters to our wrist pads and added, almost as an afterthought, standard kit only. 1 beacon per team. Use it if your survival probability drops below acceptable thresholds. This is not an endurance sport. It was the closest thing Commander Jax had ever said to a joke. I looked at my roster. Team 13. Squad Lead, Rilk Vask. Members, Luma Asterian, amphibious, delicate, excellent at reading weather patterns. Bront Carrick, silicate-plated, high-gravity native, very strong, very slow to be impressed. Marrakeen human. I blinked once. Then again slower, as if that would change the letters, human. Humans had joined the Union only a few decades ago and spent most of that time being politely tolerated by diplomats and quietly feared by survival instructors. Their homeworld Earth sits at a threat rating that makes most species' gill slits close in sympathy. Humans are physically fragile in the ways that matter: blood loss, blunt trauma, sudden vacuum, but they also have a cultural habit of recreational risk. They climb vertical rocks for enjoyment. They ingest plant toxins to prove social dominance. They run long distances while smiling, which is the most unsettling part. Humans do not make sense. And yet they keep arriving at the end of disasters, breathing hard, asking if anyone wants snacks. I found my team in the hangar where the drop pods waited in a neat row like eggs laid by a very nervous machine. Luma was easy to identify. Asterians have translucent skin with pigment cells that flare with emotion. Hers was pulsing a sickly yellow-green that translated to "I would like to be elsewhere, preferably a safe ocean, ideally yesterday." Bront stood beside her like a boulder that had learned to wear a uniform. Carricks don't show fear so much as disapproval of physics. Bront was frowning at the pod, at the floor, at gravity itself. And then there was the human Marrakeen was sitting on. A crate, boot on knee, using a small blade to peel an orange fruit with casual precision. Humans had an entire category of food that required manual preparation with sharp edges and called it a snack. She looked up and saw me, and her face did that human thing where the mouth curves upward as if danger is amusing. "You're Rilk?" she asked, tone friendly, as if we were meeting for a study group rather than being fired at a predatory planet. I am, I said. You are Mara Keen. Mara's fine. She tucked the knife away, offered a piece of the orange. Fruit to Luma without hesitation, then to Bront. Luma recoiled like the fruit had threatened her family. Bront examined it. Is it alive? It's citrus, Mara said. It's dead. It was never really alive the way you mean. Bront did not take it. Mara shrugged, ate it herself, and hopped off the crate with the loose energy of someone about to do something fun. Okay, squad lead, she said, giving a small salute that was almost correct. What's the plan? I opened my wrist pad and tried to sound like the kind of leader who didn't sweat through her collar. The plan is survival. 72 hours. Reach extraction coordinates. Avoid unnecessary engagement. Unnecessary engagement, Mara repeated, as if tasting the concept. Define unnecessary. Luma made a small sound, almost a whine. Please define unnecessary as all of it. Bront's voice rumbled through his chest plating. Define unnecessary as talking. I ignored him. We will establish a moving route toward the extraction point. I will set pace. Bront will assist with terrain. Luma will monitor water and environmental changes. Mara. Front, Mara said immediately. I'll take point. That was not a request. I did not assign. I know, Mara said. But I'm the best at. Spot the thing that wants to eat you, because my species is basically the thing that used to hunt other things that wanted to eat us. Luma's pigment flashed a panicked neon. That is not comforting. It's not meant to be comforting, Mara said cheerfully. It's meant to be effective. Commander Jex's voice came over the hangar speakers, crisp and indifferent. Cadets, board your pods. Launch in 5 minutes. My abdomen tightened, a reflex my species evolved for deep water pressure spikes. I hated that the Academy had managed to trigger it with bureaucracy. We boarded. The pod sealed. The launch system did not count down so much as inform us we were about to become very fast, very briefly. There was a lurch, a roar. Gravity turned spiteful. Luma squealed. Bront braced like he was trying to shoulder-check the universe. Mara whooped. I love this part. She shouted over the internal vibration. You love falling? I snapped. Everyone loves falling, Mara said. They just don't all admit it. Then the pod shuddered as atmospheric friction grabbed it like a giant hand. The viewing slit brightened with green vast layered forest and streaks of gray where stone ridges cut through the canopy. Nara 9 looked like a painting designed by someone who had never been attacked by wildlife. Impact came hard enough to rattle my teeth equivalents. The pod's shock gel did its job barely. The hatch released with a hiss. Heat and moisture rushed in, heavy as wet cloth. The smell hit next. Rich soil, rot, resin, and something sharp chemical, metallic-like. Lightning had been bottled and spilled. Luma stepped out and immediately pulled her breathing collar tighter. It burns. Air's fine, Mara said, already scanning. It's just full of personality. Bront lifted the supply crate out as if it weighed nothing. Inventory. We laid out our kit on a flat rock. Standard survival pack, water purifier, med gel, thermal sheets, fire starter, protein paste cartridges, a multi-purpose blade. One emergency beacon sealed in a case with a kind of warning label that meant, use this and the instructor will judge your ancestors. Mara stared at the blade like it had insulted her. That's it? She asked. No range deterrent? The Academy wants to test improvisation, I said. Mara bent, picked up a fallen branch, tested it, then cracked it against a stone. The break was clean. She shaved a point into one end with her small knife. Improvisation, she agreed, and smiled in a way that made Luma's pigment go pale. We moved out within 10 minutes. I refused to linger near the landing site. Noise. attracts curiosity. Curiosity on a Class 3 world has teeth. The forest swallowed us quickly. Everything grew too close. Vines looped like ropes. Leaves the size of my torso dripped constant condensation. The ground was springy with layered decay that hid roots and holes. Mara walked at the front with her sharpened stick held like it. Was an old friend. Bront used his mask to push through the worst tangles without complaint. Luma stayed between us, breathing shallowly, eyes flicking up at the canopy. "What's the big threat here?" Mara asked, quiet but casual. "Ambushers? Stingers? Something that spits acid?" All I said, because honesty is a form of leadership. Luma whispered, "Storms." "Yes," I added. "Storms that can uproot trees and throw stones." Mara made a sound of impressed. "Delight." "Oh, sick," Bront rumbled. "The human enjoys danger." "Not danger," Mara corrected. "Challenge." Luma's pigment pulsed, "We are going to die." We covered maybe 6 kilometers before the forest changed. The air grew cooler. The smell shifted from rot to something like hot metal. And then I noticed the plants, thin, reed-like stalks with reflective surfaces, standing in dense clusters. Bront stopped and tapped one with his knuckle. A crackle jumped from it to his hand. He jerked back, more annoyed than hurt. Luma squeaked, "Electroflora." "Yes," I said. Briefing noted it. "They store atmospheric charge and discharge when disturbed." Mara crouched, eyes bright. "So, don't touch the shiny grass." "Correct." Mara reached into her pocket and pulled out a small roll of tape. I stared. "Why do you have tape?" "Because tape fixes things." She tore off strips and wrapped them around the handle of her spear stick, then used the stick to push reeds aside, clearing a narrow path without direct contact. Bront watched, silent. I hate it when humans make my planning look inferior with something they call common sense. We made it through the electroflora field without incident. Then the forest opened into a shallow valley where the ground dipped toward a stream. Mist hovered in bands, low and thick, like the planet was exhaling. We stopped for water. Luma worked the purifier with trembling fingers, but she did it efficient, careful, the way an Asterian does anything that involves not dying. Bront stood, guard with his shoulders squared. I checked our heading. Mara didn't kneel. She didn't drink. She froze, head tilted slightly. "What?" I asked. "Smell that?" Mara whispered. "I smell many things." "Not the rot," she said. "The other thing, like wet copper." Bront rumbled. "There is metal here?" Mara's gaze tracked across the mist toward the far bank of the stream. "No. Predators sometimes smell like that on my planet. Blood and glands." I raised my sensory frills, trying to pick up anything besides humidity. Then I heard it. A faint, rhythmic click, not mechanical, but patterned. My stomach dropped. Down. I hissed. We crouched. The mist shifted. Something moved on the far bank, low and smooth, its body blending with the mud. It wasn't furred like the stalkers from the briefing vids. It was plated, segmented, with a ridge of thin spikes that vibrated slightly as it breathed. A Naru knife dashed back. The file called them semi-aquatic opportunistic pack hunters. The file also stated, "Avoid engagement." Mara's grip tightened on her spear. "How many?" Another shape slid out of the mist, then another. 3. Then a fourth behind us. In the reeds near the water, close enough that I could see the membranous. Eyelids flicking. We were surrounded. Luma's pigment flashed bright panic. "Beacon?" "No," I snapped. "Not yet." Bront shifted, placing himself between Luma and the nearest knife back with a slow inevitability. Mara whispered, "Okay, we're gonna make ourselves big and loud, right? Predator psychology." Predator psychology varies by species, I hissed back. Yeah, but most things don't like surprises, she said. Then, without warning, Mara scooped a handful of damp soil and flung it hard into the mist straight at the knife back on the far bank. The creature jerked, startled. Bront seized the moment to stomp forward, slamming his foot down with a shockwave thud that vibrated through the ground. He roared deep, grinding like stones in a crusher. The knife backs clicked faster. Uncertain. Mara stepped beside Bront and yelled a human noise that was not language, so much as audacity made audible. The knife backs hesitated. One crept forward anyway. Spikes rising. Mara jabbed the spear stick into the mud, not at the creature, but between it and us hard enough to make a sharp crack. Back, she commanded, like the planet owed her manners. The knife back snapped its jaws, then suddenly recoiled. Not from us. From above. A shadow dropped out of the mist canopy fast, silent, landing directly on the knife back's spine. Something with wings and too many joints, talons digging into the plated back like knives, finding seams. The knife back shrieked. The winged thing shrieked back. The entire valley became chaos. Mara grabbed my arm. Move now. We ran. Not in a neat formation, not with academic discipline, just motion and breath and the desperate logic of not here. Bront scooped Luma up under one arm like she weighed nothing, because in that moment she probably didn't. Her pigment flashed wild, strobing fear. We crashed through the undergrowth until my lungs burned and my legs started sending warnings. I did not have time to read. Behind us, the clicking and shrieking faded. Predators turned on each other. That was the gift of hostile ecosystems. Everything is hungry, and you are not always the first choice. We didn't stop until we found elevation, an exposed ridge of stone studded with thick-rooted shrubs. From up there, we could see the valley and mist below like a trap laid by the planet. Bront set Luma down gently. She immediately sat, shaking. I do not like this world. Valid, Mara said, panting but grinning. There was mud on her cheek, and she looked pleased about it. I checked our position. We'd veered off route, but not fatally. Then Bront pointed with one heavy hand. There. On the far side of the ridge, tucked against a rock face, was a crude shelter, logs and packed mud, half collapsed. Not natural. Not old. Another team approached carefully, because the second rule of survival is, if you find someone else's camp, you also find what made them leave. Inside the shelter, the air smelled sharp and wrong. A cracked wrist pad lay in the mud. A ration pack torn open. Med gel smeared across a stone like someone had tried to stop bleeding fast and failed to do it neatly. And on the back wall 3 shallow gouge marks in the packed mud, like claws had scraped at it. Luma's pigment dimmed into a pale, sorrowful wash. They were here recently. Mara crouched, touched the med gel, then the mud near it. Still tacky, she murmured. Hours, not days, Bront rumbled. We should leave. We should mark it, I said, voice tight, for recovery teams. Mara glanced at the beacon case. You want to call it in? If we call it in, I said, we may be judged as unable to continue. And if we don't, Luma whispered, they might die. Mara's expression hardened, the cheerful mask slipping away to reveal something older and sharper beneath. There's a middle option. She pulled out her knife. Not to fight, she used it to carve a simple symbol into a tree root outside the shelter. The Academy's standardized distress marker, plus our team designation, plus a directional arrow indicating our route. Anyone passing will know, she said, and the instructor's drones will see it on their scans. I exhaled slowly. Agreed. We continue. Day 2 became a grind. Naru 9 did not offer flat ground. It offered slopes disguised by vegetation, rocks that rolled when stepped on, and insects that treated your skin like public property. Brant's joints began to creak from constant adjustment. Luma slowed, her amphibious body struggling with the irritants in the air. Mara never stopped moving. She set a pace that was not reckless but relentless. When Luma's breathing hitched, Mara adjusted, shortening strides and breaking the path more gently so Luma wouldn't have to fight the plants. When Brant's chest plating scraped against a thorny vine, Mara cut it free without being asked. At some point, I realized something uncomfortable. Mara wasn't just good at not dying. Mara was good at keeping other people alive. By late afternoon, clouds stacked over the canopy like bruises. Luma stared up, pigment shifting to warning red. Storm front, how bad? I asked. Class 3 bad, she whispered. Wind shear. Debris. Mara squinted at the sky. So the kind where trees fall. Yes, I said. We need shelter. Solid shelter. Brant pointed toward a cluster of boulders ahead, their bases intertwined with roots. There, overhang. We reached it just as the storm hit. Rain did not fall. It arrived hard, horizontal, driven by wind that screamed through the forest like something alive. Branches snapped. Leaves tore free in sheets. Somewhere nearby, a tree went down with a boom that shook my bones. We huddled under the rock overhang, pressed close, watching the world outside turn into chaos. Mara, of course, watched it like it was interesting. This planet is spicy, she said. Luma made a noise that might have been laughter or despair. When the storm finally eased, night had already swallowed the forest. We made a fire under the overhang using damp wood and stubbornness. Brant shielded the spark with his body. Mara coaxed the flame like she'd done it 100 times. Luma warmed herself close enough that the heat made her pigment soften from panic red to exhausted amber. We ate protein paste in silence. Then Mara said, quietly, "We're making good time." I checked our route. We were behind in distance, but not doomed. If we push tomorrow, I said, we can reach extraction before the full 72. Brant rumbled. Acceptable. Luma stared at the fire. Unacceptable if we die. Mara poked the coals with the end of her spear stick. We're not dying. You cannot promise that, I said. Mara looked at me, eyes steady. No, but I can promise that I'll keep trying until I physically can't. There was a simplicity to it that made my carefully stacked statistics feel flimsy. We rotated watch. On my shift, the forest moved around the edges of the firelight. Eyes glinted and vanished. Something heavy paced beyond the rocks, sniffing, considering. I kept the fire fed with minimal smoke. I kept my breathing quiet. I did not sleep well when my shift ended. None of us did. On the final day, we broke into a different biome-less canopy, more open scrubland, with tall grass and scattered stone pillars. Visibility improved, which should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like walking across a plate while the planet decided where to strike. Extraction coordinates led us toward a clearing marked by a metal platform and a thin beacon-mast academy. Equipment, bright and unmistakable against the wilderness. Almost there, I said, voice tight. Luma's pigment flashed hopeful blue for the first time since landing. Brant increased pace. Determined. Mara grinned, then abruptly raised a hand. Stop. We froze. What? I whispered. Mara crouched, ran her fingers through the grass, then held them up. Tiny grains clung to her skin, glittering. Ant eggs, she murmured. Luma's pigment snapped to alarm. Swarmers. I scanned the ground and saw its subtle depressions, like small vents. Too many. Too evenly spaced. We were standing on a nest field. Back, I hissed. Too late. The earth burst open in front of Brant as if the planet had decided to boil. Insects erupted, winged, translucent, biting mandibles clicking, rising in a cloud that turned the air into a living storm. Luma screamed. pigment flaring white-hot as insects landed on her suit. Bront swatted, crushing dozens with each slap. But more came. I felt them hit my back, searching for seams, trying to get under my collar. Mara ripped open her kit pouch, yanked out the fire starter, and without hesitation dumped fuel onto a cloth strip. She struck a spark, lit it, and swung the flaming cloth in a tight arc. Fire. Smoke. Heat. The swarm recoiled. Just enough. Run! Mara shouted. We ran through the clear grass toward the extraction platform, insects trailing like a furious shadow. Mara kept the flame between us and the swarm, swinging it despite the risk, despite the heat, despite the fact that one wrong move would turn evaluation into cremation. The platform scanners lit up as we hit it, gasping, flailing insects off our bodies. A speaker crackled. Team 13. Commander Jex's voice announced as if nothing interesting had happened. Arrival recorded. Stand by for retrieval. Luma collapsed, trembling. Bront leaned forward, hands on knees, chest plates clicking as he tried to vent heat. I stood still because if I sat down I might not stand up again. Mara stamped out the last of her improvised torch, then looked up at the sky, smiling through sweat and bug bites like she'd just finished a workout. See? She said. We did. I stared at her. We were attacked by, yeah, she said, nodding, but we did it. The retrieval shuttle arrived with a controlled roar, descending like a clean, civilized promise. The ramp dropped. Medtechs hustled out, scanners in hand, faces tight with professional concern. One of them looked at us, then at the bite marks and the mud and bronze scraped plating and Luma's shaking limbs. You lot look like you took the scenic route. The tech said. Mara grinned. Highly recommended. On the flight back, strapped into seats that did not smell like wet death, Luma finally let out a shaky laugh. It startled her, like she didn't recognize the sound coming from her own throat. Bront rumbled something that might have been approval. I checked the time. 70 hours. We'd beaten the limit. Mara leaned her head back and closed her eyes. Good. Team, she said, voice soft now. I surprised myself by answering honestly. Yes, I said. We were. Because the terrifying thing was this. Somewhere between the predators and storms and insects and the weight of Naru 9's humid air, we had turned into something tighter than a roster. Something that moved together, and humans impossible, cheerful. Humans had a way of making you feel like surviving was not just something you did. It was something you could do again. Back on the Academy ship, Commander Jax met us at the hatch, all sharp angles and calm judgment. His gaze moved over our injuries, our exhaustion. Team 13, he said. You arrived early. Yes, Commander, I said. He looked at Mara last. Cadet Keen. Mara sat up straighter, suddenly very polite. Sir. Jax paused. Then said something I never expected from him. Your improvisation was effective. Mara smiled like she'd been given a medal. Then Jax's eyes returned to me. Cadet Vask, you maintain cohesion under stress. I blinked. I attempted to. It was observed, he said flatly. Which, for Commander Jax, was practically a love poem. He dismissed us to medical. As we walked limped, in Luma's case and trudged, and Bront's Mara nudged my shoulder. Lightly. You did good, squad lead. I did not, I began. Out of habit. Mara cut me off. You did. You kept the team thinking when thinking was hard. I did not know what to do with that, so I did what I always do with unfamiliar data. I stored it for later analysis. At the medbay doors. Luma turned to Mara, pigment soft and warm. Your species is exhausting, Mara laughed. That's fair. Bront rumbled. The human is a hazard. Mara pointed at him. A hazard with excellent outcomes. I sighed because the strange part was that I felt it too beneath the exhaustion, Beneath the sore muscles, beneath the lingering itch of insect bites, a small stubborn spark of pride. And that is how humans get you, not by being stronger, not by being invincible, but by acting. Like survival is a problem you can solve with grit, duct tape, and an absolutely irresponsible amount of optimism. They make you believe you can do it too, which is objectively contagious.